Just a few more days to get 20% off the entire merch store.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, with just 7 months until the Rise of Skywalker, I think now is the time to cover this massive influx of news that we're about to get. Rise of Skywalker, such a provocative title. It makes us wonder who the Skywalker could be. Rey, Luke, Anakin, Kylo? Personally, I have yet to have a sound theory as to who the Skywalker is, but that's a different video for a different time. Today, we can cover what JJ Abrams said when asked about the title he gave to the 9th film. This is what he had to say, and then we're going to talk about it. Well, the title feels like it's the right title for this movie. I know it's provocative and asks a bunch of questions, but when you see the movie, you'll see how it was intended and what it means. But in the flow of titles, this title had a very big responsibility. It had to be the end of not only 3 movies, but 9 movies. The idea of incorporating the movies that come before, strangely, is the story of this movie. It's the characters in the film inheriting everything that's come before in previous generations, whether it's the sins of the father or the wisdom that they've acquired. And the question is this new generation up to the task? Can they stand up to what they have to? So in a way, we came to this movie having inherited a lot, and the question, can we do it, is a question we ask ourselves every day. So this is pretty big news, man. I mean, he's saying that essentially this movie is the culmination of the prequels and originals into one. This is, a Star Wars fan's dream. The entire plot and story of this one centers around the original story. This couldn't be better news. The fact that JJ is, from what we know, honoring George's story to a certain extent at least, and revolving this film around the originals and prequels is music to my ears. He says whether it's the sins of the father or the wisdom they've acquired, I think means whether it's the bad things that Anakin has done or the new ways of dealing with the Force in general that Luke has been trying to teach them before he died. The question is if they're up for the task or not. As we come into this movie, he says, we've inherited the prequels and originals, essentially. So that means Anakin's rise and his fall, and then Luke's rise. But that isn't just one-sided. There's 2 sides to this coin, and that also means that Vader's rise and fall and Palpatine's rise and fall as well. No pun intended. I think JJ from this interview is going to definitely be using lots of the prequels and original continuity in his story for episode 9. At this point, at least. We have to remember that JJ went to George to brainstorm with him about ideas regarding the final chapter of the Skywalker saga. George has always made Star Wars about the Chosen One, about Anakin. He said this countless times, so it's not just wishful thinking to hope that he's going to have Anakin come back in some sort of way, shape, or form. In the original concept art for episode 7, we saw that JJ wanted Anakin back as some split Force ghost with the light and dark side, which I wasn't really a huge fan of because I don't really understand it, but we also saw that he wanted to use the ideas that he's using in this film with the concept art from 7. That was where Rey dives into the Death Star underwater, and sure enough, we see the Death Star on Endor underwater. At least I think it's Endor's forest moon. So what could happen down there? Could she get possessed by the Emperor's belongings? Could she find something that she didn't mean to and trigger a flashback of darkness, death, and destruction from Palpatine's visions? I think JJ is very talented and smart, and I don't have any worries about episode 9 at all, at least up to this point. In fact, I think it'll reunite Star Wars fans totally, just like we ironically see it in the trailer, with metaphors of Kylo's helmet being put back together and the Skywalker lightsaber being fixed. Personally, I would love to see Anakin return along with Palpatine. So in order to fix things of the past, as JJ is basically saying that these characters have to do, we have to look at what Anakin did in the past. He did a lot of wrong, but we can see that mirrored in Kylo. Anakin was in the light, but he was constantly pulled to the dark, whereas Kylo is in the dark, but he's constantly pulled to the light. I believe there's some sort of redemption that can be fixed and reversed here, and that will fix the wrongs of the past. And it might even, I don't know, if Palpatine comes back, it could send him into ultimate darkness or remove him entirely from the story, or some sort of plot line that would be figured out later on. Now, as I'm going to go into another video about this more into detail, I briefly want to say that how do we think Palpatine could return in this? Is he just a hologram? Has he just been teaching Kylo through ways of the Force, or, old transcriptions, or maybe even a hologram himself? Or has he returned in some sort of way like Lord Momin returned with the possessed mask that kind of brought him back? Or just maybe he has some portal underneath Vader's castle that can bring back the dead. Either way, Anakin will have to rise, because if he doesn't, then it kind of just makes his whole arc sort of pointless. So if Palpatine comes back, I believe Anakin will have to too, and I'm hoping that the Rise of Skywalker is Anakin. But I'm going to go more into that on another video. Or, it could be the Rise of Kylo, which would make sense. Personally, I would love to see Anakin return along with Palpatine in some sort of way, but I can talk about that in another video. Thanks for watching this one, and I will see you all in the next one. Until then, remember, The Force will be with you, always.
Fulfill your destiny.